Hello, hello!
Hey, hey!
Welcome back to another episode of ISBN-Depth. This is our September 2024 episode. We're going to focus on Spanish Heritage Month this time. We're going to give you, of course, housekeeping. We're going to give you some quick facts about what Spanish Heritage Month is and some facts about the writers of Latin culture. And then we're going to dive into what we read that was also in theme, as we do every month. So, first is housekeeping. So September is library card sign-up month. You can get a library card at any time, but we really like you to get one in September. And we usually have some kind of contest going on. It's usually for about a week, and it's it's like a new library card, not you like renewing yours or like getting a new card because you lost yours, but like a new fresh account. And usually we team up with Wonderworks. But as we're filming this right now in August, we don't have the information on it, but that's typically what we do.
Yeah, there will be something. If it's not Wonderworks, it will be something exciting to kind of give you the drive to come and get your card if you don't already have one. We are also celebrating Banned Books Week, so we always like to pay special attention to Banned Books Week and do really creative displays. So I know we'll have one on the reference second floor, so come and see that. They're always really fun. Mm-hmm. We enjoy putting them together, and then of course celebrating books that are quote unquote banned from different areas. Obviously not banned here.
Yeah, and I've had people ask that before. It's like, are you banning these books? And it's not. It's other people that have had an issue with the book, and they could be religious groups, they could be educational groups, they can be of just different backgrounds, they can be a singular person, but these are books that have been challenged for some reason or other. Here lately, books that tend to be challenged tend to be over LGBTQ material, material about Black and brown authors,
different religions, including the Bible.
Yeah, and the Bible has been, I think it's one of the most banned books. So there's some irony of certain groups banning books they don't like, but you could point fingers back at their items and say, the thing is, libraries are meant for everybody, yes. And that means everybody. And if you don't like the book, you don't have to read the book. And the same thing goes for you don't have to force anybody. And we're not forcing anybody to read. We're just highlighting that these are books that people have strong thoughts and feelings about, and maybe you might want to check it out just to be part of the discourse.
Yeah, and with our displays of the books that we sort of choose, there are always information sheets that we put out that give you a little bit more information about maybe why they're banned, Banned Books Week in general, and all of that good information. So if you're curious, we always get a lot of questions.
And you can always look at the ALA, the American Library Association website. They always are going to have that covered, and we usually pull recommendations from their lists.
Yes. So. Yeah. Absolutely.
Other things that we have going on are Show Us Your Southern Grandpa. Like the grandma, we ask that you bring us a picture of your papa and give us a couple lines about him, and we'll copy the picture and we'll put it up on a little poster, like a trifold, in the library lobby where other people can see about your papa and post about theirs.
I had somebody the other day ask me if Missouri was considered a southern state, so that's what I had told her too, but I guess, yeah.
So, and it doesn't have to be anything long, just a few sentences. Yeah. So.
Okay, and then just as a reminder, we're also doing the D-Day Oral History Project. So Lisa Christian, our genealogist in the History Center, is sort of manning that, and she's asking anybody who had experienced D-Day or has any good material on that. We really are looking for oral history, so if people can come in, or do we go to them as well?
We can do it over the telephone.
Okay.
I think it's something she's expanded to, and it doesn't have to be necessarily obviously a lot of veterans have passed away, but if you have stories about your grandparents or your parents that served in D-Day, and just generally World War I in general, Lisa's happy to take it.
Yeah.
It's just the focus is on D-Day, with it being the 80th year anniversary.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be something that I'm looking forward to seeing, so I think it'll be nice.
So as we hinted in August's episode, story times are well on their way in September. KFL Baby Rhyme Time. There's 2 on Wednesdays. So one's at 9:30 to 10:30, and then there's Tyke Tail Toddler Times, which is Wednesday 11 to 12.
And those are all with Miss Jessica, who is our children's librarian. So including the story times on Wednesday, we also do have another one with Miss Jessica on Thursday from 11 to 12. That is our theme this year, is all together now. So kind of focusing on community members and that sort of thing. We're really I know she is looking for community members. So if you know anybody or who would like to, come and volunteer and talk to some fun kids, she's always looking for those. And then, of course, Seymour is also doing their story time. Those are on Tuesday. Is it Tuesday or Thursday?
No, Tuesday.
Okay. Tuesdays from 11 to 12. And then Kodak's preschool story times is Fridays from 11 to 12. So lots of good information.
Yeah, almost a story time every day of the week except for Monday.
Yes, and you can find those in our booklet. So if you are at any of our locations, you can kind of grab that, and that'll give you more detailed information about the theme.
And coming up this September,
Yeah.
we have a very special guest for story time. It's going to be Jasper and the Creepy Carrot. He's going to be arriving towards the end of September. We didn't get the dates and time in the book, but if you talk to your local children's librarians, Miss Jessica, Miss Meredith, and Miss Rachel will have answers to when Jasper will show up. And as always, there'll be like photo opportunities. He'll be going out into the community with Miss Robin Waitman for her outreach programs. So it's actually sort of I'm going to say the fiscal year of the rabbit, because it's technically not the year as like everybody sees it, but we're having Jasper in the fall, and then we have Peter Rabbit in the spring.
Oh yeah,
so
that's something to look forward to.
Year with the rabbits.
Yes. Okay, so that is a really fun activity that I think kids are going to look forward to. But just as a reminder, our Spanish bingo is starting back up. That is usually manned by our greatest librarian, Ari Vergara, and she does that. Well, I don't remember if it's the third Saturday of the month.
I think it is.
I think it's the third. From 2 to 3. This month it's September 21st. And then that same day, we are having a Bluey Paw Tea. So we will have Bluey here to kind of mingle with everybody. We're going to have Bluey themed snacks, games. It's going to be so much fun.
I think Bluey and Bingo are supposed to be there.
That's awesome.
They're going to raise the woof.
The woof. Ooh, I like that. And that is from 10 to 12. So it's going to be awesome.
So really, you could just like stay all day, and there's going to be activities, because the Spanish bingo is family oriented too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of a nice way to celebrate Spanish Heritage Month, especially if you don't really know much about it. And like, I think, how does she do it? It's like a Spanish word, and then you gotta like, there's on the bingo board. But I was gonna say, it's like even if you're not like well versed in Spanish, you probably know more Spanish than you realize.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they do sound very similar to some words. So.
Yep, so always fun.
All right, so that was KFL. So now we're moving on to Seymour events. So they're going to have a Seymour Puppet Club on September 13th from 4 to 5 in the afternoon. So they encourage readers that are up till 5th grade, so anybody that's reading pretty competently up to 5th grade, are encouraged to bring stories to life with cute farm animal puppets. And they'll make their teams, and then they'll create their mini plays for everybody to enjoy. So I thought that was pretty cool. Kind of reminds me of when you read like Little Women, they do things like that when they were younger. They would have their plays.
I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah,
how fun. They also have a homeschool junior book club. So we were trying to decide the age group for that. We said, this probably
it's about tween, but also maybe a strong juvenile reader, because for this book they're reading A Wrinkle in Time.
Yes,
and I think a lot of people read that in elementary school.
So. That is September 11th from 4 to 5.
And then they also have a homeschool teen book club. So we all, we want the community involved, like, even if you're not like going to public school. So the teen book club is September 25th from 11 to 12:30. So it's about midday, and they're going to be reading The Giver. I read The Giver. I like The Giver. I've not read The Wrinkle in Time, but it's on my list one day to get to.
Yeah, great. Have you read both of them? And yeah, I enjoyed both of them. And the funny thing is about A Wrinkle in Time, I actually read that in college. I was in a juvenile sort of class, like literature class.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. Okay. So also this year, and I know everyone at Seymour is just going to go crazy
Mhm.
because they are like newly this year having a habit reading
Mhm.
dog, and his name is Buddy. So that's going to be super fun. That runs September through May on the second and third Fridays from 3:30 to 4:30. So please come and give Buddy all the love and come read to him. So
Yeah, if you're unfamiliar, it's for like children who have a hard time like reading out loud or just need someone to practice with, and dogs are very good listeners and they're not going to judge you.
exactly.
So, yeah,
And they're always very sweet. We of course had Chrissy here
Mhm.
for many years, and the teens loved Chrissy. She came here Wednesdays and Fridays, I believe. And of course she doesn't do that
She's
anymore. She's
retired.
Bless her heart. She's enjoying her retirement. But yeah, 3:30 to 4:30, September through May,
And
second and
then-
third Friday. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I mentioned this in August, but for those who missed August or just like to hear the news again, new for Seymour is the Family Cookbook Club. So the first meeting you just missed it. It was like the day before, on Thursday, the August 5th, or sorry, September 5th. But that was just them kind of deciding what their themes were going to be. So the first actual cooking day, as far as I know, is going to be Thursday, October 3rd from 5:30 to 7. So you're more than well, and don't feel left out if you missed the first one. We're always happy to have more people come. And that one sounds really fun because it's the whole family involved. And I think maybe cooking at Seymour, or they just bring a dish.
That's a great question.
You should ask Karen.
I would think to bring a dish, but
yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, the new Family Cookbook Club.
Okay, now moving on to Kodak and what they have going on over there. Their Between the Lines Teen Book Club is back September 17th from 4 to 5. This month's topic is the best of 2023 fiction. Reading recommendations are Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, Secrets Never Die, Light Lark, Check and Nate, The Island, and Betting on You.
I've read none of those.
No.
When I was reading, the only thing I've heard of is Light Lark, and I think that was some controversy around the author with plagiarism.
Oh, interesting.
But it still like was one of those books that like had a rocket really fast success or something like that. But anyway, but Meredith, who's the teen librarian over at Kodak's, always looking for people to join her, and she always has really good snacks.
Yeah,
so,
she's awesome.
But yeah, she sort of has like a broad assigned reading, where sometimes the others will just do a either do a specific book or maybe do a author. But she's got a few options, so if there's something that doesn't fit you can try another.
Yeah.
And then habit reading with Hickory. Hickory is literally the sweetest dog. I love Hickory. She actually sent me a picture of Hickory the other day. And the poor baby, I think, had like a bee sting or something, and one cheek was just so
What
puffed.
kind of dog?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Golden.
Okay.
Like it's a nice goldy color. Maybe a lab.
A blonde dog.
A lab or retriever or something. It's just the sweetest baby.
Aww.
But yeah, Hickory had a puffed up cheek, and even with the puffed up cheek, Hickory looked happy to be there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they're going to be on the first and third Wednesdays from 3 to 4, also through September through May. So during the school season. And then moving on, that's I think all of our.
Wow, that was so much information that we just threw at you.
Yes,
but
throw out more.
September is a big month for us because we're launching back. The kids are finally back, from summer break, and we're launching back into programming.
Yes, my September's so full between what little vacation I'm taking, and then I've got like adult anime club, teen anime club. Also now I'm doing cookbook club here at KFL. And then we've got, I think, a podcast and a bonus podcast schedule.
You have a lot on your plate.
I'm so tired.
But we are very appreciative of you.
So tired.
And all of your hard work that goes to make these programs great for our patrons. So, okay, so let's kind of launch into a little we're going to focus, of course, on Spanish Heritage Month, or otherwise known as Latin Heritage Month. It's sort of changed over the years. But we're going to go into a little history of Spanish Heritage Month. It started as a week-long celebration 55 years ago under the Johnson administration. However, under the Reagan administration, which was 20 years later in 1988, thank you for the info, Sam.
It's from the Smithsonian.
It finally expanded into a month. So because it spans from September 15th to October 15th, like why? I guess the big question is why, sorry.
Why? And it's to honor the many Central American
Yes.
countries celebrating their independence.
Yeah.
So, and I should have wrote them down, but there were several. And then also, if you're ever confused about like the term Hispanic or Latino, this is how like the Smithsonian put it on there. And this was from their, I think, Latino like specific collection. But Hispanic is used to signal a connection to Spain and the Spanish language, whereas Latino, which is what the Smithsonian kind of chooses to use, is for like all the diverse residents of the United States. So it's more of a cultural and ancestral ties to America and the Caribbean, and also acknowledges Black, Indigenous, Asian, and other heritage that mix in with it. So it's not just Spain Spanish. It's like Portugal speaks Portuguese, Colombia, and all the South American countries, people that have immigrated and have mixed and mingled and stuff.
And just to kind of tie into that, sort of the displays that we pull for try to include a lot of these different authors from different descents. So we try to kind of include everybody, a variety, and just kind of honor their work. So that's what we're looking for. So today, the Latino population in the United States is over 60 million, which is not surprising, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. This makes up 18.9% of the total population and is the largest racial or ethnic group.
And I also saw, and I didn't include this in here, but I think children, when it comes to the racial and ethnic, it's 1 in 4 children are Hispanic and Latino.
Oh, interesting.
So
that's a good bit of information.
And if you look at it now, it's like almost 20%. So like if you dumbed it down to like 10 people, that's like 2 in 10 people would have Hispanic or Latine backgrounds.
Wow, interesting.
So and I've also pulled some writer stats, and these are all from wordsrated.com. They're about the only place I can find that has like really concise, like what I'm looking for when it comes like to statistics. But and I think their range was like from about 2014 to 2020 is sort of what they're pulling from. But there's 12,015 writers that have been registered as Latino or Hispanic origin in the United States.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, we do Mark Who Reads What, but we kind of mix it up sometimes. So they have the biggest increase in U.S. authors, 33.60%, and it's the biggest gain of all ethnic groups from 2014 to 2020.
So Latin and Hispanic authors are the biggest minority authors group in the United States as of 2020, which is why, of course, we love to highlight their works because they have beautiful works, always fantastic covers, and just such a wide variety of, genres and that type of thing. They are also the second most frequent minority group in children and YA picture book category after Black authors.
And this one was kind of interesting. So how to put this where like it doesn't like sound like a statistic. Authors of Hispanic and Latin descent are on average less than 2% likely to become a writer compared to the average American citizen. So while they are making leaps and bounds and gains and stuff, they're still sort of on the back foot when it comes to like it's not always super equal and just and all that. And so
which is unfortunate because if it is 20% of our population, obviously we need works that represent.
Yeah. So
and that do you want to launch into your book review?
Yeah, so that kind of gets us through our fast facts. Let me find my book. It's not actually on the table. I've got it next to me.
Oh, okay.
Let's see here. So how I heard about this is The 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel García Márquez, who has such a beautiful name.
Yes.
I actually got it through like a BuzzFeed article, and they were talking about like reads for like during COVID or something like that. And the picture I think they used had like a woman on it or something. So I thought it was going to be like about, and there's women in it, but this was not at all what I thought the book was going to be about. And then when I was reading the back, I was like, what?
So what did you initially think it was going to be about? Just from...
I thought it was going to be like a woman who was in her house for 100 years
okay.
and magical stuff happened. Like I had no clue. I didn't read into it. I saw like what little blurb there was on BuzzFeed, and it was enough to be like, oh, that sounds interesting. And it's been sitting on my list for 3 or 4 years. Like it's been there for a minute. So I was trying to flip to the... how many there's like 7 generations of people that this book follows, and it follows the Buendia family. And spoiler warning, this book's a little weird. Because like some book, and this could be me not knowing, because this apparently it's a big work of literature. Gabriel García Márquez is actually a Nobel winner for literature. Not for this book specifically, but this book did help him get there, and this is considered one of his magnus opus works. Like it is one of his it's one of like the, in certain lists, like one of the top 25 books.
Yeah, I definitely think we've all probably heard of it, just not known exactly what it was about, you know.
Yeah, and I unfortunately didn't know it was such a big thing until like I just kind of like read the back, and I was like, oh, this is a bigger deal than I thought. And there's some books, like, getting into them, they're going to be weird, like Flowers in the Attic. I didn't expect this book to have as much incest as it did. It was, and there's a family line, but the names repeat a lot between characters. Like, let me flip back to the thing, because as I'm reading them, I can keep them straight, but like as I'm trying to recall which character. So there's Aureliano. That name pops up 22 times. And there's Aramanta and Remedios and Ursula. And so some of the names will be like from one generation. You have Aureliano Bonita, but then his son, he has Aureliano Jose, and then he has 17 Aurelianos by mistresses. And then you go down, and so in the next generation, there's Aureliano Segundo, and then in the next generation after that, there is actually no Aureliano, but the 2 grandchildren, there's 2 Aurelianos, and in the 7th generation. And so it's a lot of to keep track of. They've got pretty distinct characters, and it's like I said, this book is just very weird. And I had the Wikipedia page pulled up, because it's not like, this is something like you would read along maybe with, you can read it by itself. But I feel like if you want the impact of it being a work of literature, you need to kind of look at outside sources. And so I was, just as a quick thing, looking through Wikipedia, and I was pulling themes of like, they would talk about like the elite classes in Colombia, and how like, and that's what the main family, it was followed several generations, but it followed just 7 generations of them. There were players that popped in and out, but it was sort of from what I understand, like a commentary on the history of like Colombia and other maybe Latin countries, is where maybe they only focus on these big famous families and not the individual people, and you really only focus maybe on the positive traits, and they're also wrapped up into themselves, and that's part of the incest comes in. And they have in things like, besides the names that repeat themselves, events sort of repeat themselves, and traits repeat themselves, and none of them, except for maybe like the second to last generation, had like any really good love connections. Like there's one of the Aramantas, I think the first one, had several like suitors, and she wanted them, and then she'd always reject them, and then like she just ended up being alone, and other thing. But it's one of those, like they were on there stuck within themselves, and they could get out but they couldn't, and that was sort of another piece of commentary. And not that I know a whole lot about Colombian history, actually probably none. This book also touches on some Colombian history aspects that like are not necessarily like straight lifted, but there's echoes of it. One of the wars that the colonel fights, and he fights in like 37 wars, it says, and he loses like most of them. But it's based off the 1,000-Day War in Colombia. And then there was later on, you get the Banana War, which is actually based off of a real massacre. Sorry, not Banana Massacre. And it was in like 1928 in December, and it was you know the Chiquita brand of bananas. They used to be like the United Fruit Association or something like that, one of those like company names. And of course when they they settled down and started making harvesting bananas, but then they'd exploit the workers, and the workers would make a union and try to get things like a 6-day work week, 100 pesos paid once a week, get rid of the company store, like things that we would look at now and be like, that's very reasonable.
Yeah.
But they were gunned down. They put them in a, like they made an announcement in the square, and there's these machine guns on top of the buildings, and they're like, hey, you have like in the book, and I think echoed in real life, they're like, you have 5, like they read their degree saying like, we're not going to do this, and you've got 5 minutes to leave, like, or and then they gunned down people, and the fruit company and the Colombian government in the book completely covered it up, like it never existed. As in real life, we sort of know it existed, but we don't know like necessarily the numbers of the dead. It ranges from 47 to 2,000 people. And in the book, they were loaded up on trains and dumped out into the ocean, and no one believed that's what happened. And from what I understand, like in real life, the Colombian government like sided with the United States Fruit Company, because like if the United States Fruit Company kind of pulled out, then they would lose a lot of money, and also the government was very conservative, and these union groups were very viewed as like socialist and communist. And actually Gabriel García Márquez is a socialist.
Okay.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think like maybe his grandfather fought in the 1,000-Day War, and that was also against a conservative and liberal governments and things like that. So that reappears and stuff. And there was a broader thing. So it starts with in the book, it's a very isolated place, and then an isolated family, and then eventually like the book starts and it ends. Like this town starts and it ends. This family starts and it ends. That's not going to be a spoiler, really. But they have like these drifts, like these times. So it starts out with gypsies, which what we would call today Roma would be more politically correct. But gypsies came through, and then bringing in inventions and things like that. And then later, like these armies came through when they were, fighting for the governments and things like that. And then the American companies came through, and then left. So it sort of was marking broadly movements in historical periods that happened in Colombia.
Interesting. How interesting.
But what I really enjoyed was the magical realism in this book. Because sometimes when you read a book, there's this idea of suspension of disbelief. You read something fantastical, but you kind of like accept it's fantastical. Now, sometimes authors don't nail it, and you like read a book and you go, I don't buy that, or I don't like that, But this, with magical realism, is the idea of like it's magical is an everyday thing. And he says it so blandly and so like with the same facts of the story that it doesn't seem outrageous or outlandish. So you have things like the insomnia plague that show up, where like people no longer sleep and they feel fine, but they start forgetting stuff because they their brains aren't resting. And so that happens, and then it goes away, and people like don't freak out with it. They just kind of take it in stride and try to adapt to it. And like there's this couple that gets together, and when they get together like and love each other, their cattle and their horses and their chickens and everything multiply, and then they can sell them. And then there's like ghosts are constantly
oh, how interesting,
in and out of this story, and ghosts age too. And this one man he comes in Melikides, I don't know if I'm sure I'm saying his name. Anyway, he was like a gypsy man who came, and then he dies, and then he comes back to life and lives with them for much longer, and then dies again, and then his ghost appears to other generations, and within the generations they see ghosts of their past loved ones, and it's just a normal aspect, which I think is also a little bit broader in Latin literature and culture, of this idea of ghosts and being able to sort of somehow contact the dead and stuff. So like it was a very interesting read. I do not think I would read it again, and I don't know if I necessarily would recommend it as like it's definitely not a light read. It's very dense, and you have to pay attention to this. Like I paid attention, and I still don't know how the insomnia plague ended. I missed that detail, but but focusing on the family and things like that. Like,
and of course has like a lot of heavy themes too, right? I mean,
sort of, but he doesn't play them off as heavy. Like, I have to. I mean, the war, yes. The massacre, yes. But like, I went to outside literature or Wikipedia, but to help me sort of grasp these larger themes.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's like, it's not something like I would sit down on a casual afternoon and consider, like how does this intersect with Colombian history? I don't know enough Colombian history to do that, but I imagine like maybe a lot of readers that aren't Colombian or just even well versed in like South American history wouldn't have a great idea. So so in a way it's like I'm learning, but I don't know if this was like as rich of a book for like someone with, you know, a degree in literature in Colombia that has a really good grasp on their history. This would probably mean a lot more to them than it does to me. So I have to be like, yes, I understand it's a good piece of work and it helps a lot of people. And Gabriel Marquez Garcia, I just think I flipped his name around. Sorry, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, was a movement of himself. Like I said, he won a Nobel Prize in literature, but he also like was part of this group of Latin men and writers who kind of pushed for Latin books to be at this level. They were finally considered sort of on equal with like European and United States, like technically and literary and things like that. So this was like in the 50s and the 60s. And so they finally sort of got their foot on more of a global stage. So like I can acknowledge like that's what he did and this work has meaning and stuff like that. It's just the meaning's not inherent to me, and the book for me wasn't the best read. Like I'm glad I read it, as I'm like sort of glad that I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or A Picture of Dorian Gray, but I'm not gonna reread them. They're not my favorites.
Necessarily moved by it.
Yeah, like it's not like reading Pride and Prejudice and enjoying it, or To Kill a Mockingbird and also enjoying, you know, like yeah, I don't know. It's written in the way of like you can be like, oh yeah, I can see why this would be considered literature. But then I also, as I read it, was considering, and I don't have the answer to this, but what makes a piece of literature? Mm-hmm. You know, like who decides the importance of a text? Besides, you know, academics, but like for what reasons and why? Like why pick Gabriel Garcia Marquez out of the lineup and go, this is it, you know?
Yeah, and I think obviously it's ever evolving, you know?
Yeah.
What is a great work of literature now, you know, it dates itself for sure, I think.
And that's from a historical point of view. It at some point doesn't align with like everybody's ideals like now, like, you know, but at the time in the 1957, I think, or whenever he wrote this, impact. Like, and it tells you about who he was as a person, and you can get his like socialist values coming through, and you can get what he thinks of his own culture. And I think one of the lines in the Wikipedia that stood out was some literature person, I'm sure, was saying it was an attempt. This was like the first time in sort of like this movement of books was Latin America trying to understand itself, write about itself and understand itself. And so yeah, like this book isn't, you know, meant for me, but it was, you know, I'm glad to say I read it.
Yeah
So that was probably a really long book review.
That was wonderful.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I did not read this month, so I guess we'll kind of wrap up there. However, make sure to come and check out our displays, obviously at the King Family Library on the second floor. I'm sure we'll have one up on the third floor, and then of course at Seymour and Kodak, celebrating these authors because there are so many of them, and I think their works need to be seen and recognized. And even if it's something like you said that you wouldn't normally pick up, you know, it's still
I gained some knowledge from it,
exactly.
whether it was just at the basis level a banana massacre happened, but still people died over it. And the United States was unfortunately part of the reason it happened.
Do you know if there were any like reparations for families years later, or
probably not?
No?
Probably not. And like me and Ben were talking before the podcast started rolling, was that like these were banana republics and these massacres happened. It's like there's more than one, and they happened, and it's just a kind of, it's one of the darker moments of, United States imperial colonialism, like we didn't we did colonize, but a lot of it was also like companies and things like that. We, when you read about UK history, you've got like the East India, you got West India companies and things like these that had armies and stuff. We aren't so terribly different. It's ours at a different time with different kinds of guns. So no, and it's one of those things, like, not to be like, oh, America's awful. It's just, but like, we can acknowledge we've done some not so great stuff in other countries, and that was one of them. And that's what and they do, like, I think they just call it the American Fruit Company in here. Like, they don't name it by name or anything.
Okay.
But one book I want to recommend for you to read to your girls during Latin Heritage Month. I just was about to say festival. I put this in like a year or so ago. It's called Jovita Wore Pants, and it's about a Mexican freedom fighter, and it has like a biography of the woman in the back. But honestly, it's so beautiful, like the colors and the imagery in it. And I kind of want to reread it because I only vaguely remember like the story of it. Is that she sort of, you can't like just put gender terms on people of the past because they obviously didn't have it. But it made me wonder, because she sort of dressed and acted like a man, but I wondered if she would have identified as a man. Like, is this part of not only being Latin culture, but also maybe even intersecting a little bit with queer history? But you can't necessarily put these terms on these people.
But talking about illustrations, I feel like that's just a testament to a lot of these Latin works. Colors. Very bright colors, beautiful illustrations. Just always so fantastic. So
that's your homework.
Yes, that'll be
report back to me in September.
We'll read it tonight.
Yes.
Okay, so we are also do we want to discuss a little bit about our bonus podcast?
Yeah, so
that will be coming up.
Yeah, I think it airs, if it's on time, September 20th. I think I told you the wrong day, but it's September 20th. Okay. I couldn't remember the film date. The film date's this month.
Yes.
But yeah, you want to talk about that because you're taking the lead on that one.
So coming up in October, specifically October 26th, from 10 to 1, we will be having a local author showcase. So we do this every other year, sort of in rotation with our small business sampler, because those are two very large events. But we are having local East Tennessee authors set up displays. They will bring their books to sell. If you're interested in either participating or in just coming out and seeing these great works of fiction, nonfiction. We have young adult books that, young adult authors that will be here. So, and children's authors. So, if you're interested in just coming out to see that, we highly encourage it. We'd love any interest. You can always just call the library and they'll forward you to me on the second floor. Looking forward to that. We are going to interview one of our authors. We haven't selected who, and I think Jessica is going to come up too, and we're gonna it'll be
I might leave it to you guys. Huh? I might leave it to you and Jessica.
I mean, up to you. Obviously we'd love to have you because you're always a great
I'm always here
person.
But it's if you remember back, if you've been watching us for a while, or even if you just want to go back, we've done similar. So last year was a business sampler. The year before that, the first year we did the podcast, we had an interview with J. Casper Kramer, who was our headlining author of that event. So what we're doing this year is we're choosing a smaller author, and then I think, is it Lori Foster is our main?
Lori Foster is our main author. She'll be doing an author talk from 2 to 3 on that day. So we're really looking forward to having her. And she is a part of our Sevier County Reads author pick for this year. So that's exciting. And we're just looking forward to having her and kind of hearing what she has to say about writing. And she writes romance.
Yeah, I was trying to think. She tends to do romance
fiction. So so we're looking forward to that.
And so that's pretty much it. We'll see you again in October, which is Halloween-ish. I think we're doing TV shows, I think. So
yeah,
Yeah, I have to think months in
that'll be fun.
advance.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And thanks again, Ben.
Yes. Thank you, Ben.